today's video, I'm going to be doing major changes to the geometry of the front suspension, and then I have an event announcement, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. Right now we're kind of in a gap between events, and a lot of times when I have a long enough gap, I started doing major changes to the car. So earlier, like in the year, I did the display ignition system on the car. Another time I did the S1 sequential shifter. This time I'm kind of looking at the suspension. So if you've been following along, then you know that I broke the suspension at the last autocross. I've gotten that fixed, and not really going to do any major changes to correct that at the moment, because that's going to probably be like a redesign or creation of some fabrication of some new parts, but just kind of look at the suspension and figuring out what geometry changes that I might be able to do. The tires just are not wearing on the inside edge as much. That's telling me that I need more negative camber. So I'm looking at the suspension and trying to figure out what ways I can get more negative camber. If you're not familiar, I've created my own double wishbone SLA suspension on there. So how I designed it was camber would be mostly set by the upper control arm by putting shims in there to move the upper control arm in or out. Right now we are all the way in, 0 shims, and I still am at like -3 degrees, where maybe I need to try -4 degrees of camber to see if that will help get the more even wear across the tire. So to be able to do that at this point, I have rod ends on the lower control arm, so I can extend those out, so that's easy to do. I do have to disassemble everything to kind of get to that point. Also, the upper arm bracket, I need to make sure that that is pushed all the way in against the frame as much as it can go, so that will also give me negative camber. Maybe it's a little bit out or something of that regard, so I need to double check that's pushed all the way in. Other ways is I could try to lower the upper control arm, which would then pull that top part of the tire in more, but that's a redesign. I'm already at the lowest setting for the upper arm, so that would be a designing of a new upper control arm bracket, which kind of outside of scope at the moment. Then another thing is I could raise up the lower control arm. So I have 3 mounting points on the lower control arm. Right now I'm in the middle location, which is 1 inch up from stock. So the next hole would be 2 inches higher than stock. So I could raise the lower control arm, which would then push out the bottom of the tire a little bit more to get more negative camber. But raising that lower control arm could have some other effects. So raising the lower control arm will increase my roll center, which could be good, could be bad. A lot of times it's bad to increase or to raise your roll center. It would give me more negative camber just because of raising it up would push that bottom out, and it would change my camber gain. So these are all things that could be good, could be bad, depending on what's going on with them. And if I increase the lower control arm, I might have to increase the upper control arm, which then would kind of get me back to where I was on my camber. So a lot of things to kind of think about, but we will kind of look at it. I'm going to plug all the numbers into the suspension geometry, the suspension analyzer tool, and we will see kind of where we're sitting at the moment. So I know what I kind of had designed to, but things change and tolerances are different as I build it versus in the model. So we'll plug all those numbers in and we will take a look at where we're actually sitting right now. So plugging the numbers into suspension analyzer, with the lower control arm in the middle hole and the upper control arm in the lowest hole, my roll center height is between 1.25 inches and 1.5 inches above ground, which is a little bit lower than I thought I was going to be at. I was kind of targeting to be more in the 2 to 3 inch range. If I increase the lower control arm to the highest hole by leaving the upper control arm to the lowest one, it jumps my roll center all the way up to above 5 inches, which is probably too high. If I then raise my upper control arm to the next hole up, the middle hole, which is only 1/2 inch higher, it gets my roll center back down into the 3 inch range. So roll center is kind of the point that the body, the CG, will roll around. So the furthest you are away from that, kind of the more body roll you will have, because you have more leverage on that roll center. Your CG has more leverage on it. So if you take like a breaker bar, so this is our roll center, this is our CG. It has more leverage on it, and as you move up or get a shorter one, you have less leverage on that. The CG has less leverage on the roll center, so it rolls less. But there are adverse effects to going too high, so you need body roll. You need body roll to have traction. So you don't want to put the CG and the roll center at the same point. You won't have any body roll, and you won't have as good grip. So you want the roll center to be low. A lot of times between 1 to 3 inches is kind of what they say for a race car. But there are adverse effects to raising that roll center. So as you raise the roll center, you introduce jacking into the suspension, and jacking wants to lift the car. Jacking is bad. You don't want a lot of jacking going on. So it's a fine balance of trying to figure that stuff out. And then also, as you change the upper control arms, you're changing your swing arm length, which goes to the instant center, and that kind of defines your camber gain. So you want to have, I've heard, have a swing arm that is at least your track width long. So I noticed as I raised just the lower control arm, my swing arm length got much shorter. And then as I raised the upper one, it got longer again to where it was more suitable. So it's kind of hard to really quantify how that's going to really feel and affect the car. But I think I'm going to try it. I have some time to do the changes, and if I don't like it, I have time to get the changes set back. I mean, it's fairly easy. I have to take a lot of stuff apart, but just to move the upper control arms and lower control arms up and down the holes, I have to reset, all the geometry, the caster, camber, toe, all that stuff, but it is all doable. So I think I'm going to raise the lower control arm and raise the upper control arm and kind of see how that feels. I think it should be less body roll, which I'm already kind of maxed out on my sway bar. Springs could be a little bit, I could raise those if I wanted to. Right now, I believe we were at 400 pound-inch on the front. I forgot what that calculates to on the wheel rate at the moment, but I could increase the spring rate to kind of limit that body roll if I wanted to, but I'm kind of thinking of trying this new geometry to see how that feels. The jacking could be bad, could make the car handle worse, but the roll center change could make the car handle better. I don't know. I think it's worth the try, and that's kind of the fun of this, is just trying different things, seeing how the car feels, how it reacts. You'll learn a lot more. You have a better understanding of all the changes and what those changes actually affect, instead of just, reading them in a book or reading them online. You can actually have a physical feel of how those changes affect the car. So let's dive in and kind of take a look at what all these things that I've been actually talking about. All right, so this is the suspension on the passenger side. So the lower control arm have multiple holes in this side. So I'm going to take this all out. So I already have the steering rack pulled down, but the steering rack has to come off so I can actually pull that bolt out. It can't come from the other side. It needs to come in from the front side. So we'll pull that bolt out. We'll raise this control arm up to the top hole. And then we'll also raise up this rear link back here, just with different shim stacks back there. So all it does is just have these different little spacers, little shims in there to stack it up. So we want to try to get it to a similar height as the front one. And then the upper control arm, I will loosen it up and move it up a hole as well. So that is the plan. So let me start getting work on it. While I'm working on the suspension, I'm also draining the transmission fluid out of the T5 to be able to put in some AMSOIL ATFs, full synthetic. This was recommended to me for transmissions to help with the shifting. So hopefully that will kind of fix the rough shifting that we're having with this S1 sequential. If this doesn't fix it, then yeah, it's definitely the synchros in the transmission probably starting to go and gonna need to do a full rebuild, but we will give this a try first. Now for the event announcement. I'm super excited to say that I have signed the car up for Ford Fest out in Bowling Green, Kentucky, September 28th to October 1st. I've signed up for the Grand Championship, which is autocross, 3S, and drag racing. So obviously I'm confident in the autocross abilities of the car. The 3S is basically autocross with a little bit of a stop at the end that I need to figure out, but drag racing. Never done drag racing with this car. I've actually only done drag racing once or twice with my old Fox body. So that'll be something that we'll need to figure out, but it'll be fun regardless. If you guys are gonna be at Ford Fest, come and find me. I'd love to meet some of you guys. But for now, let me get back to getting this car all ready. The suspension is all done, and that was a lot of work. So something that hopefully I'm not gonna have to repeat. Hopefully this setup works. So I kind of went for the middle of the road roll center. So it's just over 3 inches. If this works, I might try the 5-inch one. I was thinking that it was too high, but after more research and talking, it might actually work out better for autocross being a little bit higher, having less body roll. But we'll see. That change is actually pretty easy to do since that is all just in the upper control arm. Moving the upper control arm is pretty simple. It's the lower control arm that is a lot of work. But right now we are pretty much dialed in. So I'm at -3 3/4 camber on both sides. Caster is at positive like 6.5. And then toe is set at pretty much 0 toe. So we are pretty much good to go. Height, I think, is back set to where it was. I kind of forgot to exactly measure that, but I think my height is pretty close. If we need to, I can always jack it up and adjust it up here or back down the coilover if need be. But I think we are pretty good. We got, you know, 2.5 fingers right there, and then this fender is cut up beyond this fender flare. So I think we're pretty good there. So that is it for this video. Hopefully this huge suspension change works out for me. I still got several events throughout the season. I'm in a close battle for overall champion with the club, with autocross club. So I really want to win that, and hopefully this this change helps and doesn't hurt me there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we got the Ford Fest coming up, so hopefully this will also do well really out there. I like to go out there and have a really good showing and see what we can what this car can actually do. So thank you guys for watching. We will see you in the next one. Later.